Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv, and today we're continuing the summer throwback series with one of my all-time favorite shows, Zoey 101. If you were born in the 90s, this show was probably your jam. So this is going to be kind of a long one because there's several main characters. So let's go ahead and just get started with Zoey. And she is so fun to me because I kind of knew her type right away. And I will say, I feel like she's different than most type 8 females, if that makes sense. So, yes, spoiler alert, she's a type 8. And the funny thing with her is she's very direct. And I think most times girls in TV shows are kind of written to be a little bit more not kind, but not as blunt as she is. She can be very this is the deal, go with it kind of a person, which is great. And I think it was like good for that friend group because they could be a little all over the place. But for her, she's very 8ish. And this is like kind of the thing I want to talk about. And I've been debunking this stuff over on my Instagram. You can find me there at Hey, it's Liv James. And I've been talking about stereotypical things of each Enneagram type that is sort of put into this caricature, if you will, of that type. And one of the ones I said recently was just because someone's into fashion and makeup and pop culture does not mean they're a type 3. And that's kind of what I feel like for Zoey. I mean, she is into fashion. She always says throughout the show that she wants to be a fashion designer and to be like in Milan and doing all these cool things. And so she even designs those backpacks, if you remember from that episode with Mindy Crenshaw from Drake and Josh. But for her, she is very into fashion and design. And you could also tell that she's like a very, if not straight A, close to it student in the spring break episode, or not the spring break, I'm sorry, the beach party episode. Everyone's asking her, like, can you tutor me? I need help. And so you can see that she's obviously got it going on. But, such is life for the main character. Am I right? So with her, she is very decisive. She knows what she wants. She's also able to advocate for her friends that maybe are a little bit more shy or don't want to cause any trouble. And I think what's so hilarious about her embracing her eightness is all the sports teams that she wants to get on. And especially, I think it's in the first episode, we see her competing with Logan for a spot on the boys basketball team because they didn't have a girls team yet. And so she's always gone after what she's wanted. She's very like, if this door is not going to break down, I'll climb over it or something. Like she's that kind of a person. And so I don't think I need to spend too much more time on her. She's very clearly a type 8, at least in my book. But if you have a different type for her, I want to hear it. Let's talk about her wing. So for her, she's probably more of like an 8 wing 9. I don't see her super 7ish, although maybe like earlier on in the series she is. I think she seems to be pretty like calm and stable. She doesn't seem to be looking for adventure and, going out there and trying to have as much fun as she can. She's very like cool with the friends she has. She kind of is friends with everybody, which is also another thing that you don't typically see with an 8, but you would see with like a 9. And so that's what also leads me to leads me to believe that she's probably an 8 wing 9. Okay, let's talk about Lola, who's probably my favorite character, to be honest. I always thought she was so cool with like the different streaks of color in her hair. And I don't know, she was just always super fun to me. So Lola is a fun one because I went back and forth for a while trying to figure out, is she a 3 wing 4 or is she a 4 wing 3? Ultimately, I feel like I'll give you my two options that I have, and then you can decide. So throughout the series, we can see that she obviously fit in with her group of friends. But if we go back to the first episode where she's introduced in season 2, episode 1, she is like so method actor, right? Like she loves embracing a character and potentially to the detriment of her friendships because like she scared the crap out of them that first episode and they could have been like, oh my gosh, you're such a freaking weirdo, like I'm never talking to you again. And yet she was willing to take that chance just for like the experience. And so I mean, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there could be a case for her being a 7, but I don't lean that way as much as I do for her like being a 3 or a 4. So the reason, if she's a 3, I think she has a 4 wing because she embraces individuality. Like that is really her thing. She wants to be different. She wants to make her mark on the world. I think there's an episode where she says she wants to be the world's most famous actress. And so that is like a high aspiration and she is going for it. So that's like one of the things that makes me go, that feels very three-ish. And you see a lot of threes in entertainment, obviously, because they're entertainers. So that's why I'm leaning towards three. The other thing, I'm leaning towards four just because of, sorry, my phone just went off. Just because she really is so big on individuality and wanting to make a mark and leave a legacy, which is something that fours really deeply want because they do have that connection to a type one. And so I think that makes a lot of sense for her. But also, fours typically, not all the time, but typically are more introverted. And you can tell she's definitely not. And so if she's a four, she's definitely got to be a self preserving four. And if you've never heard me talk about self-preserving fours, they're called the Sunny Four. And that's because they are most similar to a type 7 and sometimes a type 1 or like a type 2. They are more extroverted. They definitely feel their feelings, but unlike other subtypes for fours, they don't get stuck in their feelings. They actually kind of like hover above that and the feelings just kind of stay below, if that makes sense. And if you've never heard me talk about subtypes, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, definitely check out the Outer Banks episode. That's the first one where I really dive into subtypes. And then you can also check out, shoot, I'm totally forgetting which episode I just did subtypes for. I think it was the aquamarine episode or the H2O. I think it was aquamarine though. So anyways, be sure to check those out if you're interested in subtypes. But really quickly, since I was talking about this, I want to touch on why I think she could be a 7. Lola is very opportunistic when it comes to adventures and experiences. And she will pretty much go for anything that's going to afford her a good time. And so if someone like wanted to make plans with her, she'd be like, yes, I'm there, which is so 7. And also, I think she's very friendly and outgoing. She also is not afraid to roast someone. I was just watching an episode prepping for this podcast. What was it? Oh, it's the one where they hypnotize Nicole so that she won't get distracted by boys in algebra. And one of the guys at the end of the episode like comes up to her and she starts freaking out. And instead of actually explaining to him why she's like, ew, and runs away, Lola just sits there and laughs, which I feel like would be so hurtful. If you were the guy, you'd be like, why is this chick laughing at me when I just asked her out? And so she's definitely not one to have to like save face or explain what's going on. She just kind of lives for the moment, which I think is a very 7 trait, but also sometimes 3s and 7s can get mistyped for one another because on the outside they seem very similar. And even more so when someone's a 3 but they're not a social subtype 3, because the social subtype 3 is the one that's more concerned with outward appearance. They're going to have maybe flashier clothes, flashier car. Not all the time, but I'm just saying this could be something that you see. They're going to be more concerned with how the group perceives them. And she, like I said, she's really not worried about that so much. So she's got to be more of a sexual or one-to-one subtype or a self-preserving subtype 3. But now that we've talked about that, let's go to the character that I realized at the beginning of the episode that I totally forgot, which is Nicole. And she's only there for a little bit, but I feel like it's worth mentioning that she is a type 2 and she's a 2-wing 3. She's so funny. She is like the most 2 of 2s and she's got a very strong 3-wing. And for her, she's obsessed with like love and crushes, and yet she's a straight A student, which is so funny. People don't think of 2s as being like very, very good in school, but I swear 9 times out of 10, they're like straight A student, 4.0, getting into Ivy Leagues. And you're like, what the heck? I thought you were like chatting about pop culture and boys the entire time. And so, not to say that all 2s are like that at all, especially if you're a 2-wing 1, you probably are not that way. But 2-wing 3s, they have that little bit of 3 in them. So they love the group aspect. They love, sorry, there's like a fly going around. They just love the idea of things and like getting caught up in that. She kind of reminds me a little bit, if you think about it, of Emily from Emily in Paris. I did a whole episode on Emily in Paris and those characters if you want to listen, but Nicole definitely feels like a young Emily to me. Also, I'm not touching on Dana in this episode because I feel like she wasn't there that long and she kind of seemed like a sourpuss the whole time, if I'm being honest. So we're going to glide right past her and go to Chase. Chase is so funny to me. And actually, I'm going to talk about Chase and Michael at the same time because this was a struggle for me. So while watching the show yesterday, I'm sitting there, and it was the episode called Broadcast Views, I'm pretty sure, where Zoe and Logan go on Chase and Michael's show, and they're kind of doing like boys versus girls. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, Chase has got to be a 6. And then I'm like, is Michael a 6? Like there seemed to be so many things where they kind of were very similar to one another. Now, the reason for this could be that Chase is actually a type 9 and he's mirroring what he sees from Michael because that's kind of what they do. Nines are prone to this thing called merging, and this is something I bring up all the time. So if you've listened to other episodes, you know, but if you've never heard an episode that talked about this, let me just brief you on what it is. So 9 merging, basically, they tend to take on characteristics of people close to them that they spend a lot of time with, or that they want to like them. And so this is kind of like a defense mechanism, but the funny thing is they don't like consciously realize that they're doing it. And so it's almost like, you know, in acting class when you do like the mirror thing and you like, you know, want to follow what your partner is doing and anticipate their next move. That's kind of what nines do. And so usually it's because they just want to go along with whatever other people are doing or what their best friend's doing. And so they just kind of go with it. But it is a little bit of a defense mechanism. And I think I talk about that in an episode recently, but I'm totally blanking on which one it is. Anyways, part of me is going, is Chase actually a 9? And if so, is Michael the 6? And is Chase taking on some 6 characteristics because not only is Michael maybe a 6, but Chase has a connection to a type 6. And so I'm like, this is interesting. I do feel like Chase has that very loyalist type personality, but the other reasoning for this whole situation could be that Michael is a counterphobic 6 and Chase is a self-preserving 6. That would make a lot of sense to me, but I haven't personally seen 2 6s be like super close friends. And it's not often that you see 2 6s that are best friends in a TV show or a movie, anything like that. You just typically see like the 6 kind of as the sidekick. I actually just had a whole spiel on this on my Instagram talking about movies I've been watching and the typical 6-9 characteristics in pop culture. Very interesting. I might save it to a highlight. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. But I know, like, for me, I have a best friend that's a 6, but we're completely different. I'm a counterphobic 6, so I come off more 8ish. She's a phobic 6, so she comes off more like 2ish, 9ish. For a long time, I was convinced she was a 9, actually. So maybe we're working through this together by talking about my friendship over here. Okay, that'd be very interesting. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Okay, that's interesting. So maybe Michael and Chase are both 6s, but they're just different subtypes. This is very fascinating. Okay, now that we've talked about that, let's go on to Logan because I feel like everybody would only have like 2 types that they think Logan is. They probably are like, oh, he's a type 8 or he's a type 3. I'm here to tell you for a fact, he is not a type 8 at all. He is a type 3. Logan, if you're a 3, please don't get offended that I just called Logan a 3. Logan is very focused on how others perceive him. He wants to be kind of like big man on campus, no pun intended. And he really has this like grandiose vision of himself. I mean, I think there's a lot to say that he's probably a grandiose narcissist. And I don't think anyone could argue with me on that one. That's not to say that 3s are narcissists also. I talk about this again in the One Tree Hill episode, but just because someone is a 3 does not mean they're a narcissist. For instance, with Logan, he definitely views himself as larger than life. And he really has the rich, entitled kid down. You know, that is like really where he operates from. And it's funny because you do see a transformation with Logan, especially after he gets with Quinn. I think he does kind of realize that he is enough because you see throughout the series, Logan is obviously a very good student, but he tells everybody that he isn't. And it's because he's afraid of people thinking that he's smart because that doesn't really fit the image that he's crafted for himself. And so this is a trap that 3s can fall into. 3s can want to present themselves a certain way. And if something doesn't fit in that persona, they kind of throw it away, even if it's a good thing. And that's when 3s are in lower levels of health. And I think, you know, there's a lot to say that Logan does deal with some abandonment issues and rejection from his father because he kind of shipped him off because he didn't want to take care of him. And so he's acting from that place. And also in the spring break episode where they do go to Logan's dad's house to film that TV show, you can see that he's wanting to show his dad that he's worthwhile and that he has it together and that he is well liked by his friends, even though his friends aren't the biggest fan of him, but they keep him around. And this kind of goes back to something that I was talking about yesterday on my Instagram post. And it was about how when you're not embracing who you truly are, you're missing out on a group of people that will be like, oh my gosh, this person's amazing. And we totally needed them in our life because you've created this fake version of yourself. And so I think Logan does miss out on what could be great friendships and really like solid, honest, vulnerable friendships because he's too busy creating this fake persona that he believes will garner him more favor, but in reality is pushing people away. And honestly, I like Logan's character. I think he's so fun to watch in terms of the character itself, you know? But if you were to think about that being applied to real life, it's really sad. But it happens. Everybody has, a situation like that at one point or another where they kind of shift who they are in order to be well liked by others. And you either realize that doesn't work for you very quickly, or you go on this path for a while and then you're like, I am sick of it. This is too much work. And then you finally let it go. And I think that's kind of what we see with Logan and Quinn. He has this persona, he's written it the entire series, and then he gets to know Quinn, and Quinn actually likes Logan for Logan. And that's when I think he starts to kind of drop some of that act and starts to be more of his true self, which is why I love the later seasons of Zoey. Okay, let's talk really quickly about Quinn since I just mentioned her. So, Quinn is hilarious to me because she has the biggest transformation from the beginning to the end. I feel like in the beginning, she's this really weird, quirky character. And I think they ended up being like, maybe we should dial her back a little bit and make her fit in with this group. And so I think it's really fascinating to see how she ends up kind of becoming more of this mature, but yet still interested in her little quirky niches character. And especially her relationship with Mark cracks me up, but I am team Logan and Quinn forever. I think I'm actually more Logan and Quinn than I am Zoey and Chase. Hot take. But Quinn, I think, could go one of two ways. So for Quinn, originally, I think everybody would be like, she's a 5. She's into science. She's smart. She has her little niche areas that she loves. Like, obviously, she's a 5. But I would like to challenge that really quick. Just because someone is into those things does not necessarily mean that they're a 5. They could have a 5 in their tri type, but their core type may not be a 5. And I think we could say that there's a case for that here with Quinn because she definitely could be a 7 because she's got so much energy and she's into her little areas of interest, but she's like always kind of going for more. Like she wants it to be super fun and she's willing to try things that are totally bonkers in order to just test a theory. And she doesn't have quite the reserved, stoic personality that you typically see with a 5. And again, I don't want to like buy into that stereotype because I think that 5s can be really bubbly and fun, or maybe not bubbly, but more outgoing than what you normally see them as. And that could be the case with Quinn. Maybe she's a 5 that's just very extroverted. But I also wonder, is she a 7 that, 7s go to 5 in health? So is she a 7 that's really in her 5 space? And is she able to have the energy that she has and like the personality and go out on these wacky expeditions to test theories and cross pollinate fruits? Is that the word? Cross pollinate? I don't know, whatever. Is that all because she's a 7 and she's just interested in more and more and more and wants to have this full life and this full kind of inner world in her head? Or is she a 5 that's just very 7ish, right? Because 5 goes to 7 in stress, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's pulling from 7 because she's stressed. Hopefully that's making sense. Hopefully you're tracking because I think I just confused myself a little bit. But with Quinn, she's kind of like embraced the fact that she's weird and different and rolls with it. And that's something that I think it takes most people like 30 plus years to really get to that point. And she's like, I'm in middle school. I'm killing it. I don't care that you don't like my personality because I like it and I'm going with it. So that's something that cracks me up about her. I think if she's a 5, she has a 4 wing because she does embrace individuality. She doesn't care what anybody else thinks. She's just very much herself. And if that works for you, great. If not, she doesn't really care. You can see that like she's fine being by herself in the first season of Zoey. Like she's kind of alone until Zoey's like, hey, you don't have any friends. I'll go be your friend. And then she goes, you're kind of weird. Maybe I won't be your friend. You're trying to like test my fruits and you're squishing my pasta. And so, yeah, if she's a 5, she's got a 4 wing. And if she's a 7, she's got an 8 wing. And I think I backed that up for you by saying she's willing to take crazy risks and do LASIK eye surgery on Mark. That's wild. But if anyone was going to do that, it would be an 8. Anyways, I think we've made it through everybody. I'm so excited that we got to do this episode. Thanks for joining me. And be sure and check back on Tuesday for a brand new episode. All episodes are uploaded Tuesdays and Fridays. And be sure and follow along on Instagram. You can find me there at Dude I Love That Podcast and at Hey It's Liv James. Also, before I forget, I am running summer sessions right now. So if you listen to this episode and you're like, I want to know what my type is, this is so fun, be sure and check out that post. I have all the info right here in this post, and it's on my Instagram at Hey It's Liv James. And basically, we're going to work through what is your type, what are your wings, what's your subtype, all that stuff, even tri-type, which is like my favorite thing on the planet. We're going to work through all that, figure that out for you, and figure out how it actually loops into your career, your school life, personal life, family, etc. So be sure and check that out if you're interested. Summer sessions are running all the way through end of July. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and check back Tuesday. Bye.